Hi everybody, my name is Mr. Francy and welcome back to the Favourites and Non-Favourites series. I love this series so much and have love for all the different videos that come up in this series, but I have to say, arguably, this one is always right up there for me. I don't remember the first channel on booktube where I saw this idea come about, but ever since I did see it, I knew it was something I wanted to add to my favourites and non-favourites. This is a video called Favourites by Genre, and so, as the title may suggest, this is a video where I talk to you about my favourite book for every single genre that I've read. So not every single book I read in every single genre, but the book that stood out to me the most as my favourite for each of those genres. I am a very eclectic reader. Some readers love to stick to just one genre, some will stick to 2 or 3, but I read several genres throughout each and every single year. And this video is a great opportunity to celebrate the diversity of all the different genres. Also, you could look at it as a potential TBR for yourself. Maybe you want to jump into a genre you've never read before, and maybe the book that I talk about for this specific genre as being my favourite might just be a recommendation for you. Only time will tell. Before I jump in and start discussing all the amazing books, my most favourite for each genre, I just want to let you all know, in case you haven't been here before or watched any of my favourites and non-favourites, I am talking about books that I have read for the year. However, as I'm filming these videos in December, then all of the books that I read in December are not counting towards my favourites and non-favourites. So these are books that I've read between the months of January 2023 and November 2023. So you will hear some stats in this video. Those stats are alluding to those 11 months of the year, January to November of 2023. That covered, let's jump right on in because I have so many genres to talk about. Okay, so the first genre I'm going to discuss is classics. So what makes a classic a classic? Well, there are many schools of thought on what makes a classic, but to my mind, a classic is a book that was written a long time ago, yes, but also a book that still, to this day, despite being written a long time ago, stands the test of time. So I read a total of 12 classics in those first 11 months of the year, and my favourite was this book, Aladdin, which is written, this particular book is written by Walt Disney. Let me explain. So, in the month of May, to celebrate my birthday, my mother and I went out to our local mall, I guess you can call it that. We call it a shopping centre. You may know it as a mall. And we walked around trying to find each and every single store that might sell books. So not only did we go into exclusively bookstores, but we went into other stores that just so happened to sell books. And we walked into a store. I don't know if this is a store that features around the world, but we went into a store called Big W, and if you've been into Target, imagine a different version of Target. That's basically what Big W is. So we went into Big W, and Big W sell, just like Target, they sell so many different things, from electronic goods to bedding to clothing to, you know, all sporting goods, all different types of things. And they also have a book section. While I was in the book section, I noticed that Disney had released classic books of their classic films that they had done. And ever since I started my booktube channel, when it came to classics, I've always wanted to acquire a copy of Aladdin. The problem is, because I did my research on this, Aladdin, the Disney film, was inspired by a book that contained a number of short stories called 1001 Arabian Nights. Aladdin was literally just one book in that compendium of short stories, and I did not want 1001 Arabian Nights, I wanted Aladdin. So when I came across this book, which was exactly what I wanted, the retelling of the Aladdin movie, I was very, very, very happy. So in honor of my birthday, despite already having gotten me a gift, my mother decided to purchase the book for me. I took it home and immediately read it and absolutely loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. So Very quick premise in case you don't know. The story of Aladdin follows a boy by the name of Aladdin who grew up as a beggar on the streets, but due to a set of circumstances he ends up coming across a genie who is willing to grant him 3 wishes to help all of his dreams come true. But, you know, things happen, as they do in any sort of a fantastical setting, and Aladdin ends up on a massive journey. This particular book was just absolutely everything I needed and more. It had the illustrations from the movie, which, of course, when I'm referring to the movie, I'm referring to the animated original Aladdin animated movie. I did not enjoy the remake because of how much the movie has a special place in my heart. So the book being illustrated with illustrations from the original canonical animated film, that is not canonical book, but canonical film, I truly enjoyed each and every moment of it, and it was by far and away my favourite classic for 2023. Now on to the next genre, cozy mysteries. Oh my goodness, I read more cozy mysteries than I read of any other genre, and that does not look to be slowing down anytime soon. However, if you have not checked out any of my videos from when I first started my booktube channel in 2020, it used to be fantasy that dominated my TBR when it came to the most amount of a particular genre that I read. But now it's cozies, and you know what? I'm not planning on slowing that down anytime soon. I love my cozies so much. So in the first 11 months of 2023, I read a total of 37 cozy mysteries, and my favourite of all of those was this book, Death of a Lobster Lover by Lee and Hollis. This is book number 9 in the Haley Powell Food and Cocktail Mystery series. So yeah, I gave this book 5 stars as well. Unless I otherwise state it, I gave every book in this video I'm showing you 5 stars. If I didn't, I will tell you I did not give it 5 stars, so it's a safe assumption. So the premise of this book is the quaint fishing village of Salmon Cove, Maine seems like the ideal location for a girls' weekend with Haley's gal pals Liddy and Mona. Liddy's on the rebound from a breakup, but when she meets a handsome tourist, it looks like a little romance might liven things up. Unfortunately, Liddy's new sweetheart is found dead on the beach the next morning at the town's lobster bake next to an overturned cooking pot. The liberated lobsters may be scrambling back to the sea, but Haley's not about to let a murderer escape so easily. To crack the case, she'll need to blow the lid off some serious undercover activity or risk becoming ensnared in a killer's trap. So to my thoughts on this book, I always love when cozies mix it up and go away somewhere for a trip or vacation, and this one did not disappoint. It was great to see Salmon Cove and everything that went along with it. Also intriguing was that some of the columns were divvied up as 2-parters, in that we'd get a column section that would end with to be continued, and then the next column we'd see that conclusion. I really enjoyed that. The mystery itself was also really captivating, and it's been a while for me since I've enjoyed the mystery side of a cozy. The reveal was really shocking also. All in all, one of my favourites of the series, despite hating seafood, which says a lot because it was the main theme of the book. So there you go. Very quickly, as I didn't do this earlier, the definition of a cozy mystery genre is exactly what the 2 words make it sound like. So some people absolutely are obsessed with cozies, like myself. Some people like them, some people don't like them, and some people fear giving them a go because I've seen on certain channels that they're getting a bit of a bad rep. So let me just tell you in a neutral way what cozy mysteries are. The best way to define a cozy mystery is to take the 2 words of the genre and put them together. That is exactly what they are. It is a cozier version of a mystery. So if you love your mysteries anyway and you'd like to read a mystery that's a little more cozy than what you're used to, cozies may be the way to go. Now, I've heard a lot of different things about Arsenic and a Bodo. Is that what it's called? Yay, go me! I have not read this book. Yes, Arsenic and a Bodo. I've heard a lot of different things, a lot of complaints about that one. And I've also heard a lot of complaints about lattes and legends, but I just want to let you know, don't base cozy mysteries off of these books. As far as I'm aware, I think legends and lattes, I think Legends and Lattes is actually a cozy fantasy, not a cozy mystery. And Arsenic and Adobo is not your standard, from what I've heard from well-read cozy mystery readers, it's not your standard cozy. I would recommend picking something up like Assaulted Caramel by Amanda Flower, or maybe even 12 Shades of Christmas by Jacqueline Frost, or something along those lines. There are so many great classic standard cozy mysteries that represent the genre so much more. So if you have considered not giving cozy mysteries a go because of those two books that are floating around booktube that don't necessarily have the best rep, pick up a classic cozy mystery. And if you want cozy mystery recommendations, feel free to ask me. I'm more than happy to point you in the right direction. Alright, I just want to give a quick honourable mention to A Perilous Pal, which is by Laura Bradford, and Christmas Criminals and Capers, which is by Tonya Kappas. I love these books as well, but Death of a Lobster Lover had to be the one that I mentioned. Okay, let's keep going. Fantasy and paranormal. I read a total of 13 books. Given that fantasy used to dominate my TBRs, I read 13 fantasy and paranormals and only 37 cozy mysteries. Huge difference. More than double, potentially almost triple the amount. So there you go. Okay, so fantasy, paranormal. Okay, yeah, I'm classifying them together, but they are two different genres. Mainly, a fantasy is a book that is set in a fantastical world or has some sort of a magical element to it. There is a difference between high fantasy and low fantasy. Low fantasy is set in our world with magical elements. High fantasy is set in a world that is of the author's own creation, and predominantly fantasies will feature magic systems, but they don't always have to. For example, there can be a high fantasy world series out there that features no magic at all, but because it is a world that is made up purely by the author and not our own world, it is still deemed as a fantasy. But the majority of fantasies I enjoy do have magic in them and magic systems in them. Okay, paranormal on the other end is more of your, like, vampires, werewolves, ghosts, you know, things of that particular nature, which isn't necessarily magic, but it's more legend, if that makes sense, rather than magic itself. Okay. Alright, so my standout fantasy for 2023 was a fantasy paranormal, which was a fantasy, was this book, The Red Scrolls of Magic, which is book 1 in the Eldest Curses duology by Cassandra Clare. So I'm just going to be brief with the description because we're taking too long already. So Cassandra Clare has written a main series called the Mortal Instruments series, and then from that series she has created these off-branch series that are kind of like sister series in all different ways, shapes and forms to the original series that she wrote. This duology, the Eldest Curses duology, which this book, The Red Scrolls of Magic, is book 1 in that duology, is an off-branch of the Mortal Instruments series that follows my favourite romance in the original series, which is a male-male romance between Alec Lightwood and Magnus Bane. It is their own series where they are the protagonists, whereas in the Mortal Instruments series they are side characters. I truly love this book. I love that we had a series that represented Magnus and Alec's romance at the forefront. So yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time, as I say, we're running out of time, but I thought this was just an absolutely fantastic read. I wish there was more romance, but I need to be understandable of the fact that there wasn't more romance because it's not a male-male romance, it's a male-male fantasy. The entire, what's the word I'm looking for here? Universe of the Mortal Instruments world is fantasy, not romance. So, despite the fact that I would have loved a lot more romance in this book, in The Red Scrolls of Magic, I appreciate that it is a fantasy and not a romance, and I absolutely loved it. If you love Alec and Magnus in either the Shadowhunters TV show or the Mortal Instruments book series or both, and you haven't read this duology, I highly recommend it. It absolutely is a love letter to the Malik, which is the ship name for Alec and Magnus fans. Next up, we have horror, and I read a total of 11 horrors in the first 11 months of the year, which is fantastic for me. I don't think I've had a year where I've read that many horrors in that year. And so, okay, let's define what a horror is. I'm sure a lot of you already know, but a horror is a book that contains horrific elements in it. I was told by a fantastic horror author a long time ago, something that's always stuck with me, which is that horror is, the genre itself is not a monolith. Different people interpret horrors in different ways, what they expect a horror to be, what they want a horror to be, which is absolutely fine. So therefore, it is hard for me to tell you what a horror is as a blanket term for a genre, other than saying it's a book that should contain horrific themes. Moving on to a personal bias, for me, I prefer horrors that either gross me out, freak me out, creep me out, force me to leave the light on, or convince me I'm going to have a nightmare. If you can do one of those, I deem it to be a good horror. If you can do all of those, it's an amazing horror. I've read some fantastic horrors this year, and I read some horrors that I felt were very middle of the road. But the standout to me was Final Winter by Ian Rob Wright. The reason this was a standout for me was because it was the only 5-star horror that I read. This is a part of the Damien Verse quartet, but you can read, there are 4 books in that series, but they don't interconnect in the way that a standard series would, so you can certainly read them in any order you want, and yeah, they read very much like standalones. But in this particular one, I don't remember the guy's name, but we're following this male protagonist who ends up going to a bar, things happen, and yeah, there are a lot of twists and turns that I don't want to reveal because they would be spoilers, but just take my word for it. Not only was it scary, which Ian Rob Wright, on a lot of Ian Rob Wright's book covers on the physical book, there is a quote from another author that says, Ian Rob Wright scares the hell out of me. And I think that he does that with me too. Most of the time he does scare me, but I want that. That's what I want with my horrors. So don't go into any of Ian Rob Wright's books unless you want to experience horror to its fullest degree, but that's what I want. There is a plot twist that does occur, and that plot twist was absolutely amazing. The horrific elements were done incredibly well, and I do highly recommend it. I need to give a shout out to Playground by Aaron Beauregard. This book did not get 5 stars from me, but it is seen as like full-on horror. I don't remember the words, but yeah, full-on horror. Yes, it is. There were some slow moments in this book that I didn't like. I think I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because of that, but the horror elements are very much up there, and I very much appreciated that. So well done to Aaron Beauregard, but my favorite horror was Final Winter by Ian Rob Wright. The next category is LGBTIQ+. No, this is not an official genre, but this is a genre that I've termed or coined on this channel because I want to distinguish a difference between male-female romance and male-male romance, and or female-female romance as well. So for me, straight romance, male-female romance, I just call romance, and we'll discuss that later. But to distinguish, I call my male-male or female-female books, or anything that has an LGBTIQ+ theme, I categorize it as LGBTIQ+. And, you know, I also want to be a representative of the, not only the LGBTIQ+ culture, but someone who's from the LGBTIQ+ culture, who reads books of the LGBTIQ+ culture, so that I can recommend those books from the LGBTIQ+ genre. I read a total of 10 LGBTIQ+ books this year, and my favorite was this book, How to Elude a Vampire by Alice Winters. This is book number 2 in the vampire-related crimes series, and if you're looking for a subgenre to the LGBTIQ+ theme, I would call this a spicy mystery paranormal. And that is because the setup for this series, I've only read the first 2 books so far, but the setup is that we follow a human and a vampire, both of which who work for a vampire police force, filled with vampires, except for the human that we follow. He's the only human in the vampire police team. Their job is to solve, as the series suggests, vampire-related crimes. There is a romance that is central to the book. There are some steamy moments that do occur. They are few and far between, however, so you can certainly skip them and it won't impact the book for you. You can just fly right by them if you want to, but if you like your steam in your books, then they are there. If you don't, here is your warning. I love this series so far, but I loved book number 2 because we got more character growth from the human, who is incredibly sassy, and I love my sassy male romances, so he was fantastic. And his partner, who is a vampire, he's not only cop partner, but he's in a relationship with this guy, is a vampire, and it was very interesting seeing that dynamic play out. Yes, we may have seen dynamics play out between a woman who is human and a man who's a vampire, or a man who is a human and a woman who is a vampire, but it was great seeing it done in the male way. The mysteries are always intriguing, and the paranormal side is intriguing as well, so definitely would have to give it to that one. The honourable mention for my LGBTIQ+ would have to be How It All Blew Up by Arvan Ahmadi. I read a book that dealt with Muslim themes that was a middle grade contemporary earlier on this year, and it inspired me to pick up a male fictional book that revolved around a Muslim gay character. That is what this had, and I believe it represented the Muslim community very well. While it was fictional, it gave me what I wanted. I wanted to see what a writer, and Arvan Ahmadi is Muslim, a Muslim gay writer would come up with when it came to fiction. And the plot of this book revolves around a Muslim gay man who is arrested on a plane, and that's the opening. I'm not going to tell you any more, but my goodness, is it a fantastic book to read. It is not incredibly tough to read. The contemporary themes aren't as tough as they sound when I say a Muslim man who was arrested on a plane. It makes you think, oh my gosh, it's a hard-hitting contemporary. It was not hard-hitting, and we find out the reason a little later on, and it's a lot lighter than you would assume. So don't go in thinking that this is all because he is a Muslim. No, it's not. There are other things that happen. He just so happens to be Muslim. He just so happens to be gay. How is this worked out? How is this resolved? How does everyone come to terms with it? Is all explored in the book, and it was fantastic. Next up, we have contemporaries. Okay, so I was explaining contemporaries to my mother actually recently because I came to find out my mother loves contemporaries. The best and easiest way to describe what a contemporary is that a contemporary book is a book that follows everyday people doing everyday things. In Australia, we don't actually have the genre of contemporaries in bookstore. We would just call them general fiction. But in America, it is seen as contemporary. Contemporary. Everyday people doing everyday things. It's a general work of fiction. And I've read 7 contemporaries in the first 11 months of the year. My favourite was Tell Me 3 Things by Julie Buxbaum. Julie Buxbaum has become a favourite author of mine. I've read 2 of her contemporaries and I loved both of them. And very quick premise, in this book we follow Jessie, a teen who's lost her mother. Her father decided to remarry and his new woman lives in LA, so he forces Jessie to pack up everything and leave behind everything and everyone, including her best friend Scar, and embrace all that LA has to offer. But what does LA have to offer? Snooty kids, a son that's always baking and way too bright, a stepbrother who wants nothing to do with her? No, it's also wrong. But then an anonymous person sends her an email. They go to the same school as her and see that she could do with some assistance. Can this person, labelled as somebody nobody, be a truly amazing gift, or is this a weird rando? Only time will tell. Julie Buxbaum explored the contemporary topic of having to start over, of dealing with we have a single father here, he's with a new woman, dealing with all of that, and our protagonist Jessie goes through a lot of emotional things because of this. New area that she's moved to, new school she's moved to, father's with a new woman. How is she going to go? She's only a teenager after all. It was really well done, very well explored, and I really loved the book, so I do recommend it. My honourable mention would go to Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. I'm just going to say about this one, it is a wonderful exploration into introspection and introversion. So if you're someone who is introspected, introverted, or both, or know someone who is introspected, introverted, or both, this is a great book to read. Francesca Zappia did a good job with it. Next category is thrillers. I read 7 thrillers in the first 11 months of the year. My favourite was this one, The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I'll be very brief with this one with you. Okay, so thrillers, first of all, should be a book that is written, that is designed to keep the reader on the edge of their seat all the way through the book. I have had a tough time reading thrillers because the majority of the thrillers I've read don't keep me on the edge of my seat, and that very much annoys me because that's what a thriller is designed to do. But this one definitely did. We follow a man who is I believe he's like a psychologist or psychiatrist, something like that, who wants to try and help this woman who has been arrested and was taken into solitary confinement. Since she was moved in there, she's been there for quite some time, she hasn't been speaking. So why hasn't she been speaking? What is going on? Can he get her to talk? And if he can, what is she going to say? Because of these reasons, this book kept me on the edge of my seat all the way through. And there was an amazing twist that happened at the end that so caught me off guard, but was so fantastic. If you are tired, sick and tired of thrillers not thrilling you, pick up The Silent Patient. It is phenomenal. My honourable mention goes to The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. I'm not going to spend too long on this book, other than to say that you should read the book. If you've seen the film and not read the book, please pick up the book. The film does a massive disservice to the book. The book was fantastic. So there you go. My next genre is dystopians. I read a total of 6 dystopians in the first 11 months. A dystopian is defined as the opposite of a utopian. Usually set in the future, we have chaos that has erupted owing usually to a tyrant who runs this world in a totalitarianistic style of way. My favourite dystopian that I read this year, or best one, was Matched, which is book 1 in the Matched trilogy. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I love my dystopians, but did not give any of the 6 I read this year 5 stars, because on the whole, all the books that were dystopians that I read this year didn't, in my mind, deserve 5 stars. I did like this book. I think that go into the Match trilogy, give it a go. You may very well like it. Book 1 was absolutely fantastic. Honourable mention goes to Specials, which is book 1 in the Ugly series by Scott Westerfeld. I gave that one 4 stars. I thought this was okay. I'm just going to recommend, if you do pick up the Matched trilogy or the Uglies quartet, that you don't read them at the same time, because they are incredibly similar. Next up, we have memoirs. So a memoir is a non-fictional work that a person has written about certain moments that occurred throughout the course of their life. I have read a total of 5 memoirs in the first 11 months. I've just come off finishing my 6th one, but as I read it in December, it does not count. So, for the first 11 months of the year, my favourite memoir was this one, Finding the Power to Thrive by Jelena Dokic. So this was fantastic. For those who don't know, Jelena Dokic is a former tennis player who made it to number 5 in the world at one point in time, but and was very successful on the tennis tour. But a lot of people don't know what happened behind the scenes. Jelena had a, speaking of tyrannical, very tyrannical father who was extremely abusive to her, mentally, physically, psychologically, and it was a very tough experience. So Jelena Dokic released a book prior to this one, a memoir explaining everything that went on in her life behind the scenes with her father. In this book, her second memoir, she talks about how that was then, and this is where I am now. Now that I'm free of my father, I have had the power to thrive, and this is what I'm doing moving forward. Jelena, in short, has been giving back a lot, and it's been fantastic to see, not only to see it play out because it's been documented quite well in Australia, but also to read it from her own perspective. So 5 stars for that one. Honourable mention to Behind the Voice by Anthony Kalia. Anthony Kalia was the finalist of season 2 of Australian Idol. He is a gay man who was not allowed to come out as being gay while he was on Australian Idol, so there was a lot that he went through during that course in time. The book does mention Idol because he is well known from the show, but it goes on to detail things that happened prior to Idol, during, and a lot of the book is what happened after Idol. And there was a forced coming out that occurred. He didn't necessarily want to do it, but it happened. He was forced to do so, and how he dealt with that moving forward. It was a phenomenal book, and I recommend both of them. The next genre is romances. This is your male-female romance, okay? Self-explanatory. It's a romance, man and a woman get together, have a little love, you know, that whole thing. I read 5 dystopians this year, and the best one was The Distance Between Us by Casey West. I gave this book 4.5 stars. My honourable mention went to P.S. I Still Love You, book 2 in the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy by Jenny Han, which I also gave 4.5 stars to. The Distance Between Us was just a fantastic romance that deals with the rich and poor trope. One person being poor, one person being rich, and how that is dealt with when both are very much steadfast into that lifestyle and have been raised to believe that that lifestyle is superior and that they can't commingle with the other one. It was done incredibly well. I highly recommend it. And the final genre that I'm going to mention is mysteries. I only read 2 mysteries this year because I spent a lot of time on cozies, and my top mystery for the year was Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library by Chris Gravenstein. I gave this book 5 stars. I do plan to continue on with the series at some point. I just don't know when, but I really loved it. This book is a middle grade mystery revolving around a boy who is taken to an escape room in a library, and he and the other kids that are there have to do what they can to try and win this game. I don't want to reveal too much, but it was a fun book to read. The honourable mention goes to Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessel. I gave this book 4.5 stars. Please go into this book thinking it's a mystery, because it is. I went into the book thinking it was a thriller and was very disappointed with it, but then when I found out subsequent to reading the book that it was a mystery, I gave it the 4.5 stars it deserved. It's a very fantastical mystery about going into this alternate time loop, I guess you could call it, where everyone that's there are 5 or 6 friends that are camping out somewhere, and they have to determine one person to die so that everyone else can live. But with everyone being selfish, how are they going to resolve this and break the time loop? It was a fantastic mystery. And there you have it. Those are my favourites by genre. My favourite mystery, romance, memoir, dystopian, thriller, contemporary, LGBTIQ+, horror, fantasy, and cozy mystery, and classics. Okay, so much more favourites and non-favourites to come. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It really does help the channel. Hit the notification bell so you can get notified each and every time I upload a video. And until next time, happy reading. Bye everyone!